Good morning, my beautiful people, and to my beautiful self. Oh, you can't feel like you're not beautiful and be self improved. And it is day 17 of our 1,000 hour journey towards self improvement. Once again, if you haven't figured it out already, I'm cliche Jeff. I don't think that's what I was going to say. But I had someone hop in a couple of days ago that felt like, oh, day 15, I'm behind, or 1,000 hours might be too much. My intention is to share my journey with you, and hopefully, you're on a path, you have your own number, and this could be day one for you. And interestingly enough, I joined a challenge, towards the latter part of last year to be active for every day in December. And I was already on something of I talked about having a full 0 day, which is a non-workout day. One of the reasons I like to do that is because it resets my app and it shows me you will have a 1 day streak or a 2 day streak. I'm on like a 74 day streak, which is great. But also, we're going to talk about some rest and what that means. I also joined the 100-day challenge to start the year, which is exciting, with the premise being 100 days of activity to begin the year of 2025, which takes us to April 1st, I believe, April Fool's Day. And we will not make a fool of ourselves this year. Chapstick, check. Look at my eyes. Do I look tired to you? Eh, I look good. I keep convincing myself of that, right? Water check. We have our amenities. We have ourselves. I'm gathering my thoughts, checking the live stream, getting the fidgets out, all the things that come with starting a stream at, what time is it? Yes, it is. It's 4:17 a.m. And it is a beautiful, beautiful Friday. I'm looking forward to another productive weekend, which means family time, alone time, self improvement time. What I would like to do, maybe we'll talk about that. I don't know. We'll see where the conversation flows. I had it written down in my notes what we'll talk about today. Excuse me. And what we will talk about today is gratitude, rest day, and the day after. And yesterday for me wasn't a rest day, but I slept in. I didn't get on the mic at my standard 4:15 ish time. I didn't wake up at 3:30. I had mentioned before deciding to not wake up at standard time. It takes me a while to fall back into sleep because I get this rush of energy to pray and meditate. I also get a rush of, I don't know if insecurity is the word, but I fight myself. Like, do you really want to sleep in? Do you really want to be weak? Do you really want to be lazy? I have to convince myself that this is a good thing to do and go through the logic of why a rest day is important. So I didn't have a rest day per se yesterday, but I definitely did get a couple of extra hours of sleep, which felt amazing. And certainly I've learned I have to remind myself as I'm getting my rest and as I'm going through my day after rest to be grateful that I had a chance to rest. So let's talk about gratitude. I think that gratitude is somewhat cliche. I think that somewhat unfortunately too. Well, not even unfortunately. It's like the word content. I use the word content nowadays. I used to be very cautious with that word until I had to look it up, and I understand now it means something along the lines of being peaceful, and that's what I just want to be is at a level of peace in my life where I'm very even keeled and balanced. And so gratitude is a very common practice in the self improvement space, and one might think because of how I believe the mind works, certainly how my mind works and my experience with gratitude, you sort of pause because the idea of thinking you have to practice gratitude might make you feel like you're ungrateful. Crazy how the mind works, right? How we sort of drift into this negativity, or, and it's not negativity as in maybe you don't feel ungrateful, but maybe you justify the fact that of course I'm grateful. Why would I need to practice gratitude? I'm already grateful. God knows I'm grateful. The world knows I'm grateful. But the truth to gratitude and what I've learned, and I talked about this somewhat yesterday, I believe on yesterday's stream, or I've talked about it enough to myself that I can't delineate between the two. It's funny, I had a conversation with one of my good friends yesterday, and I kept asking him as we were going from topic to topic to topic, have we talked about this yet? And he's like, no, I don't think so. And so I said, man, I think what's happening is I talk to myself so much, I don't remember what's what. I also do these live streams and the recordings and all the talking, even at work and with my family, that I just forget who I'm talking to when and what I'm saying. So if I repeated something, it's my show. I can do that. So gratitude, if you haven't figured out the way the mind works, one of the things that you'll realize if you do any research on neurologically how we're built, the stimulant that we receive from the high of receiving something great that we ultimately become grateful for, eventually it dissipates, particularly if you don't continue to reinforce why you're grateful. And that's what gratitude comes down to, is a reinforcement of the principalities built around constantly exuding gratitude to ensure that you're thinking gratefully, so that you're feeling grateful. And the truth to that is, if you don't practice it, then you find yourself just kind of sort of in this flow of acceptance that is not highlighting gratitude. And if you don't highlight gratitude the way you don't highlight other things, or you might highlight other emotions and feelings, then you drift away from it. That's all. It's not an indictment. I think it's because of how we're built and how our minds work. It's a fruitful practice. And what you ultimately find are there's so many more reasons to be grateful. If you think about it like this, if you take a figure of matter, of material, anything, a rock, and you crack it and crush it, you can never stop breaking down that rock. You can, even to the point where you're like, I can't see any more of the particle. There's still more there to be broken down. And in that way, there's always more reasons to be grateful. And the more that you go from being grateful for everything and you start to really shrink it, then the more you'll find that there's so many reasons to be grateful, inclusive of, man, I woke up. And what does it mean to wake up? I woke up healthy. What does it mean to wake up healthy? Like, my body works. My blood flows. I talk about this. I can breathe air. The air around me. Go to a place where the air isn't built to the way that it is supposed to be built for you to breathe. See how that works out for you. You might laugh at it. It might be a little cheesy and corny. But when you practice gratitude, it's not that you're left to search for, okay, why am I grateful for today? What am I grateful for? You really start to appreciate that life is very sensitive. Life is very fragile. We are finite beings. And the reality to how we're built is the ecosystem around us has to work, right? I said this to my boy yesterday because I read this in one of the books. I also finally got done with my first book of 2025. I think it took a little long. I like to be done with books in 2 weeks. It took about 16 days to read that book. And I had about 4 days this year so far where I haven't read. But I said this to my boy. The arrogance of us to presume that the world was built just for us and that the world might revolve solely around you and that everything that's in this world is designed for man. No, like the universe is infinite. In this way, when we put a label on God, it's almost disrespectful because you couldn't fathom God the way you couldn't fathom the universe. The mind is not, there's too much. The universe is too massive. It is infinite. So in that way, a finite being couldn't fathom the infiniteness of this world. And just that alone, be grateful. It'll hurt. You'll probably short circuit your mind trying to figure out the essence and the beauty of the magnitude of life. And so, in that way, just be grateful you have life. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Of course, you need you for your life. You're the center of your life. I don't want to demean that. We got to have, I believe, the proper balance between the urgency around fulfilling ourselves as the center of our worlds, because how else would you know the world? But also the humility and the respect for everyone else to appreciate that they too are the center of their own worlds. And wherever you're at, in the center of wherever you're at, you'll always be in the center. But because of how we're built and the way things are designed and the finiteness of who we are, I can only perceive but what I can see or what I'm focused on. There's so much other things, there's so many other things that go on in the entirety of the world that have nothing to do with you and I and us, but have everything to do with you and I and us, in the way that wherever you are and however you're living, that is your individual centered impact. But it's not just you. It's not just you. It feels that way. That can break us down. Ironically, right? When we start to do some things, maybe you're on your self-improvement journey, maybe you're on day 17 or not, maybe you took a rest day and it became 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe you already quit on the year. I hate to think that. But a lot of what occurs in our mind is that we start to feel the world shrink as if it is, as like Tupac, all eyes on me, and that feeling and that sensation can make us kind of curl up in a ball and not look to do anything different with our lives and expand our lives, because it's uncomfortable to think about it. You think you want the light shining on you, but you only want the light shining on you in a way that the light should be shining on you because you're on stage, per se. But to be on stage in a way that makes you, quote unquote, vulnerable or reveals some of your flaws, you may not want that. And the reality of life is that there's going to be some days where you feel very flawed because we're finite, because we're limited, because you don't have all the gifts. You can't have all the gifts. The reality and truth to it is the likelihood is that you have one singular purpose, because that's the way sort of the God and universe seems to work. And then you drive towards that purpose and you go. All right. Gratitude. So if we could consider everything I've said so far, time check, 4:27. Set a timer for 5 a.m. I don't think I'll go past 5 a.m. today. I feel very excited about talking until 5 a.m. today. I feel very excited about talking because I still did a live yesterday. I still went live yesterday, but not at this time. And part of what I'll get into about a rest day was the eagerness with which I woke up today. I woke up way before the alarm clock with a lot of gusto and intentionality. Not that I don't every day, but a rest day will do that to you. So the way the mind works, you'll find very quickly, and I believe also because of the external, I've said this before, 80% of how we perceive the world is through our visual sense. And the visual sense and the stimulation provided by the visual sense, because of how much stimulation is in the world with what they put in front of us as perceptual richness, you could strive for all the material things you want. And as you accrue them and get them, there'll be less and less sensation of, ooh, 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 look what I got, 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 look what I got. Look. You could have everything. We've heard these stories. We've seen these stories. People get all the material in the world and are very unhappy. So if we could use that as a baseline to say, you've done some things in your life. I could use every example I'm at. Every marker that I've set for myself, every goal I've had, I want to make this much money, then this much money, then this much money. And again, there's a lot more. Trust me, there's a lot more. There's a lot more for me to yearn for. However, I'm no longer living a public assistance welfare style life with my first job being at $4 an hour. I'm well past that. And the urgency with which you move past those milestones and then you start to accrue those milestones and you sort of start to go through your seasons and you start to live the life repeatedly, like, okay, I've been in this leadership style of life, in this, like, I've been where I'm at now for, I think this is year 7. I think I've been here since 2018. So imagine growing up in the projects in the South Bronx and matriculating. I always think of that word different than it comes out of my life. But you're going through the evolution, tomato, tomato, the process of life, and you're not where you were. Hopefully, you're well further than where you started. As you're yearning for it, it feels very like the word isn't the word. It feels, because it feels somewhat unattainable, because you see it but you haven't gotten it. The gratitude with which every extra dollar is given to you, and every extra promotion and gain and step towards that dream, desire, and goal, the more you get it, it's the reality is, like, my last promotion didn't feel like my first promotion. When I first got promoted, it was like, oh wow, this is possible. Extremely grateful. And I got the second. It was like, all right, cool. Then the third, and then all of a sudden it keeps happening. Every dollar you get, every bonus you get, every move you make, everything you buy, you're like, okay, all right, this is me now. And once you get into that, although as far removed as you are from where you started, you lose the appreciation, because the high only comes one time. You can't feel what you felt when you were first promoted again. You anticipate it, you expect it, because you've experienced it. And the more you experience these things, the less grateful you become for them. At least the sensation of gratitude. So just imagine that the chemical stimulants in your brain, the dopamine and everything associated with the feel-good high, lessens because I've done this before. And that's great, because in the same way, you build confidence. So I could do it, I could do it, I could do it. And we're improving. We're improving every day, second, minute, hour, week, day, month, year, until we become who we want to be. And so in that way, wonderful. Why then, or what do we do then for gratitude? I talked already about the finiteness to the infinite, creator, the abundance of life, the light of life. I think, everything is light emerging from the dark, all these wonderful things. And then you broaden your scope that way. So I think spirituality becomes a heavy focus. I don't know how you can go on any sort of self-improvement journey and not also have a new level of spirituality, because it requires a level of connection with self, mind, body, and spirit. And so in that way, you'll find that you can be very grateful for all of that. Now, gratitude, I think, the way that I tell you I wake up grateful, thank you, God, I'm alive today. I think you can certainly go through a meditative practice of gratitude to say, I'm grateful for all I am, and that all my body works as the way it is healthy. You can write down reasons why you're grateful, and you can get on a conversation with a friend and talk about everything you're grateful for. You can talk about it with God, etc. But I believe, and of significance for this talk, when you start to incorporate a gratitude routine, you retrain your mind on what it is to be grateful, what it means to be grateful. And so in that way, you eliminate the limiting barriers of material success. It's not to say it's not valuable and worth it, but you'll find that as you gain it, it'll mean less and less and less and less and less. You could get your first house and extend that out to a mansion and go through every other level in between. I don't know that you're going to feel much greater about the mansion than you did when you first bought the house or when you first bought the projects. You feel a little bit better, but it's like, again, it's okay. I went from 400 square feet to 1,000 square feet to 3,500 square feet to 10,000 square feet. What's the real difference? There's just more hollow space in between. Does it make you look better on the surface? Again, you move to another community. You're a little more affluent. Okay, But what is that? When you start to retrain your mind for gratitude and you start to sort of shrink, I don't want to demean it or minimize it. But when you start to see gratitude in different ways, then you can appreciate more of the things that make you want to strive for the material success. That we can wake up feeling like we're grateful. That we can move then through the course of our day and experientially have better relationships or more fruitful relationships because we're approaching them with a level of gratitude. I'm grateful that I can even have a conversation with my significant other and my children. Speaking of which, one of the things that brought me to the realization of how grateful I am in life is, and what inspired me to talk about this today, I looked at my phone to check my YouTube Studio app because I'm addicted to it. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not, and I want to see if I made any progress with anything I posted. A picture of my son came up on the beach. We were on the beach about 3 years ago, and a picture of my daughter came up from 3 years ago. The iPhone algorithm has a way of seeming to know you and push content to you that is magnificent in a lot of ways. And so I see these pictures and I realized that 3 years ago, roughly, my daughter was 12 because she'll be 15. And my son was 9 because he's going to be 12. And you start going through, wow, right? Wow, they're here and it's crazy. And they're in 15 and 12 at this point, they're mini adults, especially my daughter. And so yesterday, as I had completed my first book, which felt good because you want to check off boxes, I grabbed the second book I'll start to read, which is some sort of stoicism book from Ryan Holiday. I think it's the journey of stoicism throughout the years in life. And I'm excited for that book. I also just bought the book Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I have a litany of others. I have at least a half dozen other books that are already lined up and waiting for me to go. And I have like a dozen others that are in my Amazon cart that I can't wait to buy. I love reading. I learned to love to read. Grateful that I can talk about gratitude. I'm grateful I know how to read. Sounds silly, right? Try walking around not being able to read. See how that works for you in life. I'm grateful I can read. I'm grateful that there's material for me to read that inspires me in this way. So, all right, cool. I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. And at that moment, when I concluded the book I was reading, I set timers a lot, if you haven't realized. My timer went off almost to the second that I closed the book. And it was time for me to start cooking. I was making some meat sauce. So the significance of the meat sauce was I was grateful that I could brown the meat real quick and then drop the sauce over it. And this was about 5 o'clock. I don't have to have dinner done until 6:30. That's 90 minutes. So I said, I'll leave the sauce and let it simmer for 90 minutes. So at least, and the pasta takes, 15 minutes to boil, and I would mix it. Easy meal, right? Point is, get it on the stove, brown it, get the sauce pumping. I can go back and I can read. I can probably get another 30 to 45 minutes of reading. And part of the reason why I wanted to do this, I've had so many 0 days of reading, I want to try to sort of catch up. And so I start browning the meat. I get the sauce on. I season everything. I know it's looking good, feeling good, about to taste good. I'm grateful that I have a meal. Are you grateful for your meals? Or do you just scarf shit down like it's guaranteed to you? Just asking. I'm just asking. And as I put the sauce on the back burner on really, really low, my daughter starts to talk to me. And I could tell as soon as she starts to talk to me that this is not going to be a 30-second conversation. Dad, I want to tell you some things about what's going on and some things in the school and some things that are happening with my best friend. And my first reflex and reaction was, oh shit, I'm not going to get a chance to read. And the mind works crazy. When you set something in your mind, it's sort of like, oh man, I wanted to go read. But thankfully, in the same way, it was kind of like, wait, I could read or I could talk to my daughter for however long she wants to talk. And you think there's an obvious choice here. but you're having a rough day, you're not really grateful, you haven't really practiced a lot of mindfulness, you're not really aligned with mind, body, and spirit, you're not really settled within yourself, you're not really loving on yourself, you haven't prioritized yourself yet for the day, you feel like you got to go get some you time, you might decline that conversation. Also, in the same way, listen to this. If you're not practicing on yourself and you don't have an open energy, an inviting energy, that the people around you know they can come to you at any time to speak because you won't crash out, as the kids like to say, you'll miss the opportunity because maybe they don't want to talk to you because they don't want to disturb you. They know how you are at this time, and so they leave you alone. Think about it. Think about it. And in my journey, what I've realized is this. When I'm home with my family, nothing comes between them. There's I don't read. If I can read, I read. But if not, I stop reading. I don't have it. I only really have one TV in the house. I think two. TVs in the standard places don't exist. TVs aren't on. You understand what I'm saying? Phone calls, text messages, it was after 5 o'clock. So at that time, I have no distractions because I'm fully open to what my family might need. I had to learn that. I'm not suggesting that you haven't. What I'm saying is I had to learn that. I was present. I was home and in the house, but not present. Think about that. And think about how that might work. So in that way, when you don't present yourself as available and present and open to being receptive, you might miss a conversation that's really important. And the conversation I had with my daughter wasn't overly important that there was anything crazy revealed that is life-threatening or life-changing, but it was in this way. One of the things I read a book I believe called Tangled, and it is about the journey of young women through the teenage years and into adulthood. And one of the things the book says is that, particularly around the age my daughter's transitioning into, 14, 15, 16, young girls are, this is just from a psychologist who has, I don't know, 20, 30 years of studying teenage girls and the information I've been able to research and read and understand. That girls, as they're transitioning into their womanhood, are yearning to align with femininity. And in that way that they're seeking femininity, they have a tendency to I don't want to say rebuke, but push away any masculine potentiality. For the reason being, they want to be feminine and they don't realize that they need some sort of, because there's something called the anima and the anime, which I get into briefly in a moment here. But in their novice state of transitioning into young adulthood for women, they don't want nothing to do with masculinity. For fear that that masculinity presents a challenge to them being able to be fully feminine. And guess what is the biggest form and image and symbol of masculinity? That will be dad. Excuse me for a moment. Oh, excuse me. 4:44. We got a little bit of time. We've been on for 29 minutes. I hope you're all blessed, man. I really hope you're blessed and feeling good about life. All right, let's resume our conversation. Well, I hate when I use a blanket. I know you all, for those of you who watch, know this. Sometimes it extends down on my chair and I roll over it, and that friction gets me real angry real quick. Irritates my soul. So now, young teenage girls about to turn 15, they'll start to kind of shun and push away anything of masculine resemblance and form for fear that it'll strip them of their femininity. And so in that way, dad is a difficult relationship for them to make manifest in a way that you as dad might want it to go. And they have a lot of control, the children do, over the outcomes of the relationship, at least in my experience and the way that I manage being a father to children, especially a young lady. And one of the things I had to realize too, as part of the self-improvement process is, one, I only know what I know because of what I know, which means there's a lot I don't know. I can only see what I'm looking at because that's where I'm looking, which means there's a lot I don't see. And in that way, I don't know what it's like to grow up as a female. I'm a male. I'm a man. I'm a machismo, masculine, Hispanic male that grew up entirely different and was exposed to entirely different scenarios than my daughter and my son were. So just from that baseline fundamental, I can be grateful for the fact that I'm a father. I have a beautiful young daughter, but I know nothing about what it's like to be a female. I know nothing about what it's like to go through the experience of the body change and the hormones and the endorphins and the estrogen that comes with that. I can read it, I can watch it, I can process it, but I'm still not experiencing it because it's not me. But knowing this, I can be grateful enough to understand that she will need me. And in learning literature, the anima and the anime, a fully actualized experience for male or female doesn't occur until the male or the female adopts what would I guess be somewhat, I hope I use this the right way, but the polarized version of them, or let me just say it a little more succinctly and direct. As a male, until you're able to adopt your femininity and layer it on top of or inclusive of your masculinity, you'll never be self-actualized. Because for a male, the femininity is still early. There's a lot of where the creative resides, right? So man has all macho masculine tendencies of strength and dominance until they're able to be creative and somewhat nurturing and adopt that femininity. They don't reach their fully actualized self. What does that mean for the female? They're predominantly feminine. They don't reach their actualization until they adopt their masculine potentiality. Anima, anime, you merge them together, you get the fully actualized, fully realized experience of self. Look it up, check the psychology on it if you want to go into detail. In that way, I do my best to expose a masculine version of life to my daughter, the way I do to my son. But I know it's different because she might rebuke that. I keep going back to that word. So I'm very sensitive. I don't want to force myself. It sounds odd, right? It's my daughter. I'm very mindful of how she accepts me. So in that way, knowing all these things, when she stops me for a conversation, I stop all I'm doing. There's no phone. The sauce could burn for all I care. I'm fully focused on her. We wound up talking for a good hour. We wound up really talking until the food was done. So almost 90 minutes. And I was grateful once, and I was able to reflect on that before I went to sleep when I woke up this morning, because there was a period in my life where I wouldn't have been available for that conversation. I might have already started drinking and been lit. I might have already been starting my gaming. I played video games way too long, or texting someone who didn't really matter. I would have been disengaged. It's the idea that I'm available in the house but not present. And you miss those conversations. And so the ability to appreciate and be grateful that my daughter could be looking to push me away because of all the things she's going through that I can't relate to because I'm not her. First and foremost, I'm not her. Secondly, she's going through some things I can't align with because I've never experienced it. And third, that's just life. Like, that's the relational difficulties between intimate relationships. Wow. Thank God for this experience. Then thank God I had all the faculties to be able to appreciate the experience. I had the knowledge. I had the foresight, the wherewithal, the patience, the discipline. You think this shit sounds crazy, but there were times where a lot of the interaction with my children, I was like screaming at them, telling them what to do, versus listening to them and understanding where they are in their life experience and help nurturing them through. Very big difference. Nurturing doesn't come with, in my opinion, in my estimation, and think about any time you've grown in your life. And the easiest way for me is always professionally. I can't provide growth for anyone who reports to me, nor can I be afforded growth from anyone who's mentoring me if it's not nurturing, right? You got to water the seed. You don't step on it. you know? So, in that way, I'm very cognizant of how I speak to my children and how they're receiving me. And I'm very grateful that I can have these experiences. I wasn't having them like this for years, up until about 4 years ago. So when I made this transition, you think of it like this. My daughter was roughly 10, going to be 11. My son was 6, going to be 7. I left a lot of scars at that time. And so you work to, of course, make those things a little bit better. I got about 9 minutes left here. So that's gratitude in a nutshell. I think there's a lot of other reasons to be grateful. I think you can break this down. Like I said, you think of a rock, a boulder. You break a boulder and then you just keep breaking it down. It'll break down forever. You can keep finding reasons to be grateful. And the more you get out of the existential view, the external view, yeah, the more you can go inside and really see some of the things that are beautiful about this life. All right. The idea that you might have had some rest. I'll say that, let me put up my spreadsheet. Yesterday, I only prayed and meditated for 10 minutes. I had a 60-minute strength session. Actually, more like 70 minutes. I didn't run. I didn't do cardio at all yesterday. I was kind of shocked by that. I just forgot. That's another thing about routines and patterns. When you wake up a little bit later, you're not doing things at the time you normally do them. So it's very easy to miss something. So here's the reality, too, of where we're at. 1,000 hours of doing me. Imagine that I put in 84 hours of effort, right? So far this year. And 14 have gone into strength, 7 hours have gone into prayer and meditation, 7 hours of running, about an hour of high intensity, 44 hours of content creation. This has been big. 12 hours of knowledge and research, right? And I look at, man, this was, I wanted to do another hour last night. You're talking about I put in 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours of content creation a day. It's, I haven't put this much effort into content creation ever. Ever. And that has its effects. Except for one day here. You think about every day here, I've lost 30 minutes of sleep than what I was accustomed to before this. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. So let's say roughly I've transitioned 5 hours of sleep because I went from 4 to 3:30. This starts to have an effect, right? This starts to have an effect, which you might believe is somewhat obvious, but really isn't until you start to feel it. And like with gratitude, you're very grateful when you start doing this journey. I'm going to talk about the honeymoon phase another day, but you get very high. Oh, this is dope. Oh, this is fun. So in that way that I talked about earlier, day 17 doesn't feel like day 1, right? Even day 2. And slowly, the energy of day 1, it's not that I don't have the same energy because I feel like I'm always an energetic person. The balance is also that I'm way more comfortable day 17 than I was day 1. So you can't, paradoxically, You certainly struggle with the emotions of up and down, but there's benefits that come with it. A lot more confident, a lot more calm, a lot more clear. I prepare a lot better. All these things, you make these adjustments, but you're not as grateful, or you're grateful for different reasons. Day one, day 17. But the significance between day one, two, three, four, five, because it's fresh and new, like the new house. When you first get there, you just maybe the new car, you're driving it every day. You go a little harder than you are normally going to go because it's fresh and new. And then you kind of, I don't want to say you crash, but if you only have 100% and you're giving everything in one direction, but you're still putting it a lot everywhere else, you get tired, my G. Like, you get tired. It's natural. So in that way, you sort of crash because, like with anything else, you get too high, you crash. Just like when you drink too much the first time, or you smoke, or you do anything that is a high stimulant. To me, it's the same experience. Doing this is a massive high, and then boom, you fall. And so yesterday when I woke up, I knew immediately, like, yo, you got to go back into bed. It's You're overexerting yourself, and all you're gonna do is make yourself sick, and you don't want that. I've also learned in my life that if you overdo it, you lose the joy because it can't be that high every day. You got to come back to being balanced. So offer yourself up the opportunity every now and again to give yourself a rest day. In that way, also, I find that the experience of the rest can be uncomfortable at first. I don't plan rest days. I listen to my body and my mind for rest days. Say what you will. It might work for you, it might not. I've learned that if I kind of sort of plan my rest days, I get a little lazy the day before, or I start to look a little too ahead, like, ooh, rest day. And that for me, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't stimulate me in the way I like to be stimulated. I prefer to kind of have a spontaneous rest day, but it's spontaneity in that I'm like, yeah, today I need to rest, and then it feels like, ooh, I gave myself a gift I wasn't expecting. It's like finding $1 in your pocket. You're like, oh shit, $1. But I do, I do. It always happens when I wake up. I kind of sort of know when I'm going into sleep. I feel my body. It's like, oh, my body hurts. Maybe I've gone through 3 or 4 straight days of strength training. There isn't a muscle in my body that isn't sore. Maybe I read a bunch of content. Maybe I had a bunch of conversations with my daughter, my son, and my wife. It starts to, you're like, whoa, I'm absorbing a lot. And I say that to say you sort of need to rationalize this in this way. You want to feel like your rest has been earned. And you want to take full advantage that when you do rest, that there's a benefit to it. But in that way, because you might be so heightened at trying to accomplish something, the rest could feel like you're losing something, especially early on. And even that, I've learned to give myself rest days over the course of 4 years. Even knowing I need it, there's a discomfort like, man, I didn't wake up at 3:30. I got up at 6:15. So while you know that extra 2.5 hours was massively beneficial, that you did it for a reason, when you wake up from the 2.5 hours of extra sleep, it can be uncomfortable because you feel like you missed something. The mind, man, the mind is crazy. And you immediately start to sort of feel, oh, I'm behind, or I missed something, or I definitely haven't prayed yet. Even like I put on my socks earlier than I know. It sounds crazy, but the little intricacies that are involved in following your rhythms and patterns and routine, it's all broken. And when you break your routine, your mind gets a little uncomfortable because it starts to kind of fast forward. And in the same way, when I wake up at 6 as opposed to 3:30, it's not that I just lost the 2.5 hours. It's 5 o'clock. My timer just went off. It's that consciously I'm aware then I'm not where I usually am at 6 o'clock. So you get uncomfortable. I'm behind. I got to catch up. That emotional experience, I believe I've learned through the self improvement journey. You got to sort of practice that. You got to practice rest. You got to practice the appreciation and the gratitude for rest. You got to be strategic about your rest. And then you have to consciously know that without it, you won't have the next day. Or you may not have the next day. And at some point, if you overburden and overstress and overtax yourself and don't rest, you run the risk of not growing. Just like with the physical body, when you're strength training, your body needs time to grow. Your mind needs time to rest. And going back to gratitude, taking the step away from what you do every day reinvigorates you towards, oh, I can't wait to do it again tomorrow. Oh, I can't wait to wake up at 3:30 tomorrow. You need that. You need that for your body. You need that for your mind. You need that for your soul. I think it's worth going into it in a little more granulars. Just not today. I'm going to get into my cardio session and go about the rest of my day the way I would normally. So I offer you that. All those possibilities that you have life, you should be grateful. That you're doing good work. Maybe you're on day 17. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're on day 1. But your head is somewhere. It's a beautiful, beautiful life. Be grateful for it. Rest when you need to. And as always, change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.